the path of least resistance, or the path that people take that has least resistance. It says that it has led many rivers and many men to be crooked. Escape those limiting beliefs, escape those limitations that they've placed for you, and they told you that these things you cannot be able to get them right. But I want to tell you today that with God, all things are possible. Greetings once again and welcome back to the channel, guys. Welcome back. Now, if you're new to the channel, make sure that you subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you do not miss when a new video pops up. Right now, keep in mind, guys, that you are now available on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Overcast, as well as on Amazon Music, and you can be sure to follow us on any of those 6 different platforms. Now, also keep in mind, guys, that you are now available on YouTube, and this is to the podcast team. You can find us on YouTube at Ashley Gerera, and you can be sure as well to watch the videos that we post on that channel. Now, today, guys, we are going to be talking about how to escape any limitations, right? Also with the contrast or with the context of opposites don't attract, and that's actually something that is actually exciting, and I can't wait for us to go into it, right? But before we begin today, I have a request, right? Before we begin, let us just put on our thinking caps, right? Let us just put on our thinking caps so that we can understand the message for today, right? So thinking caps, let us switch that on. So before we begin, that's what I want you to know, right? So for you to find out more how to escape limiting beliefs and how to escape any limitations, and also keeping in mind that opposites don't attract, stick around to find out more. Now we're going to get our context from the book of 2 Kings chapter 6 verse 5, 6 and 7, right? That's where we're going to get our context from. 2 Kings chapter 6 verse 5, 6 and 7, and it reads as follows. But as one was felling a beam, the axe head fell into the water, and he cried and said, Alas, master, for it was borrowed. And the man of God said, Where fell it? And he shewed him the place. And he cut down a stick and cast it thither, and the iron did swim. Therefore said he, Take it up to thee. And he put out his hand and took it. Now, as we just read, guys, the Bible then tells us that as they were cutting down the trees, it says that the axe head fell into the water, and Elisha cast the stick into the water, and the axe head came up, right? But how did we get to this point? Now, if we try to look back, right, and we look at how it all started, we see that, the prophets came to Elisha and they said, the way we are staying, the pathway is too straight for us. So rather, allow us to go to Jordan so that we may get each man a beam so that we can then stay there, right? So now when you come to verse 5, 6 and 7, it says that in the Bible that as they were cutting down the beam for each man to carry a beam, right, it says that as one was cutting down the beam, it then says in the Bible that, as he was cutting down the beam, the axe head fell into the water, and he cries out and he says, Master, Master, alas, for it was borrowed. Now, I just want you to keep that point in mind. Remember, I said today, let us just keep our thinking caps on, right? It says, Master, alas, it was borrowed. Now, just jot it down somewhere, right? It was borrowed, right? Just keep that point in mind. So as we go on, we'll then come to a point where now we read in verse 5, 6 and 7. It says that then Elisha cast the stick into the water, and then the axe head came up and it swam. That's also another point I want us to keep in mind, guys. It says that the axe head came up and then it swam, right? So then when you then come to the conclusion, in the end, it says that he took the axe head and then it went on like that, right? So then what is our message for today? Question: if opposites don't attract, how then is it possible that wood attracted iron? Or you don't believe me? Let's read verse 6 again. Verse 6 then says that, and he asked him, Where did you throw this thing? And he showed him where exactly he threw it. And he took a stick and cast it into the water. And when he cast it into the water, it says that, and then the axe head came up, and it was of iron, right? Wood and iron, they don't mix, right? So now the question then comes again. If opposites don't attract, how then is it possible that wood was able to attract iron. So in this instant, guys, we see that it is actually possible, but not because of anything, right? The wood was able to attract the iron, not because of power of man or anything like that. In this instance, this was able to happen because of God, right? And I just want us to keep that thing in mind. This thing was able to happen because of God. The opposites were not going to attract if man had tried to use his own power, which then just shows that with God, all things are possible, guys. And I just want you to keep that in mind. It says that with God, all things, whatever it is that you want to do in life, right? All things are possible. Wood was able to attract iron. Now, this was done so that it can show wood acted as a magnet to attract iron. Now, if you are to put the two together today, they do not come together, or wood does not then attract iron. It is just not possible. But another thing also, guys, that I want you to keep in mind, it says that, and then the X or the iron swam on top of the water. And when the man then gets it, it says that, and he took out his hand and he took it. So from wherever it fell, it then came towards the man, which is just another miracle that just happens there, right? So there's so many things happening here. The wood, first of all, it attracts the iron. And then the second thing, as it goes further, it says that, and then the iron, not only does it stay there where it came up from, right? It says that, and then it came to the man, and the man took his hand to take it, which is another thing, guys. But as we go on today, I have a problem with the prophets. I have a problem with the prophets. The reason why I have a problem with the prophets is because they call upon Elisha. Guys, they call upon Elisha. They don't call upon God. Now, you see, the way they did their things, right? It was as if the power was only limited to Elisha. But no, the power was not limited to Elisha only, but the power was also able to also be manifested by them, right? Had they called upon God, God was still going to be able to do the same thing that Elisha did, right? But also in this instance, they call upon Elisha as if the power was only limited to Elisha. Now, as we bring it back to us, guys, also in life, we have people that want to benefit as a matter of consequence and not a matter of experience. What do I mean by this? What I mean by this is that, sometimes you get to a point in life where you start saying, okay, the God of my mother, the God of my father, the God of my aunt, the God of my whoever, guys. And I'm not saying anything is wrong with that. But what happened? When are you ever going to say, my God, and have an experience with him, and not just be a God of consequence, right? Because he's attached to your mother. It's just a God of my mother, God of my father, God of my sister, or anything like that, right? So let us just keep in mind. Let us not just benefit as a matter of consequence, but let us also benefit as a matter of experience, right? Just like what these prophets did. They called upon Elisha because they wanted to benefit as a matter of consequence, but not as a matter of experience. And that's just something I want us to keep in mind. Now, what caused this man to cry was not because the ex was gone. No, that's not the actual issue, guys. What caused him to cry aloud was not because the ex head has now gone into the water. No, that was not the reason for it. But what made him to cry aloud was because the ex was borrowed. Guys, remember I said that you should keep a point on that one as we begin the episode, right? Now, he says that he cries out, and if you don't believe me, let us read verse 5 again. And he comes to his master and he says, alas, master, for it was borrowed. So what makes him to cry aloud? It is not because it belonged to him. No, he cries out because it was borrowed. Today, I have a question for you. What have you borrowed other people? What is it that you have borrowed other people? I want you to keep in mind today that some of the things that you have borrowed, you will not be able to have them back. You might be fortunate, and end up getting the things that you borrowed other people, just like what this man did because the man of God was there. But in some instances, guys, the things that you have borrowed other people, they are not going to come back. So be vigilant, be jealous of the things that you are borrowing other people. Some people have borrowed other people their time. That is a commodity that is actually not going to come back. You have borrowed other people your time, and those things are not going to come back, right? So keep in mind, there are certain things that you borrow other people, but you will not be able to get them back. Now, in conclusion, guys, now we come back to our point whereby we talk about how, you can escape limiting beliefs, right? And also escape certain limitations that have been placed around you and things that have told you, what, you cannot be able to attract these things because people in our family are not able to attract these things. We are the wood and they are the iron. You are not able to attract those kind of things, right? But I want to tell you today, some have been told that, written off opportunities. They've been told that, what, these opportunities, they're not for people like you, right? You've been told that these opportunities, you don't attract such opportunities. Some have been told that you won't succeed in whatever it is that you do. Some have been told that you might be there, and you have been told today that you are not going to succeed. But I want to tell you today, wood and iron. Some might also have been told that you will not get married, right? And you think to yourself, probably people from my family, it's bad, and I'm not going to get married. But I want to tell you today that, what, those are just limitations of man, and those are not limitations of God. Some have been told that you are going to remain mediocre for the rest of your life, and you're not going to become something meaningful, right, in the whole world. And you might be sitting there today watching this episode, right, listening to this message, and you might have been told that nothing good is going to come from you. But I want to tell you today that those are just limiting beliefs of man. But when you come to God, guys, it says that, and the wood attracted to the iron, not because of manpower, but because of God. And I just want you to keep that in mind as you go on about your life, guys. You can attract anything, but not because of your own power, but because God is with you, right? Jesus then looks at them and says that, what, with man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. Not some things, not a few things, not a number of things, but all things are possible. Whatever limitations have been placed upon you today, I want you to know that you can break those limitations. Those limitations were not placed on you by God, right? Those limitations were not placed on you by God, but they were placed upon you by man. It has said that you cannot attract iron because you are just but wood. But when you come to the potter, when you come to Christ, He will be able to mold you and refine you to be able to attract the things that they said you are not going to be able to attract, right? So that is our message for today. Escape those limiting beliefs, escape those limitations that they've placed for you, and they told you that these things, you cannot be able to get them, right? But I want to tell you today that with God, all things possible, right? And that is just our message for today. So keep that in mind. Whatever they say that you can't have, keep in mind, with God, all things, not some, not a number, not 10, not 100, not 1,000, but all things are possible. May God bless you. If your enemy is hungry, feed them, and if he is thirsty, give them water to drink.